Section 3. Guiding Principles of this law. I was still going through the law book when the OC legal returned. With a smile on his face and a pat on the back, he said, "I have a case for you." He instructed his orderly, who was nearby, to take me to Solomon's former office. Then he turned to me. "You can have the law book," he said, handing me a case file. "This is your first case in G7. Make it count," he added. As I sat in the lobby waiting for the orderly who had gone to fetch the keys to my new office, I went through the content of the file to get a grasp of what the case was all about. It was a mob attack which led to the death of a young man. 3 suspects had been arrested by the division that carried out preliminary investigation on the case. I took my time reading through the IPO's report. The young man who lost his life in the case was Kingsley Ode, a 29-year-old former bank staff who left the bank to establish an online investment platform with close to 500,000 subscribers who invested millions of naira in the scheme, which Kingsley claimed would give them 30% of any amount invested. He did very well at the early stage of the scheme because he actually paid the so-called percentage to those that subscribed in the first 5 months. Eventually, the entire investment scheme went south and he started owing subscribers. But from all indications, he didn't invest any of the money. He was simply using Peter's money to pay Paul. At some point, he disappeared and no one could find him. Close to 5 billion naira was hanging and no one to account for it. People were raving mad and trying to reach him, but his website was frozen and his phone numbers were not reachable. However, a set of determined guys was able to smoke him out as they traced his movements to a strip club in Lekki where he hung out. They monitored his movements for 4 months until they succeeded in setting him up with a particularly hot stripper called Kate. These guys, named Sunday, Yemi and Funsho, were all students of Ogun State University. The 3 of them had collectively invested 28 million naira in Kingsley's Ponzi scheme. While monitoring Kingsley's movements, they noticed his keen interest in Kate. So they paid her handsomely to lure him out of Lekki Phase 1 to Aja, where the 3 of them stayed. It happened that they had lied to Kate that the police was involved in taking Kingsley down. As much as Kate was convinced Kingsley was a fraudster who had robbed people of their hard-earned money, she needed to make sure that she was bringing him to face the law. Funsho made a call to some guy who posed as a police officer, and this convinced Kate that he worked with Aja Division, so she played along. That night, Kingsley came to the club with his bodyguards who stood close to him while he was throwing money at Kate. In the middle of the whole excitement, Kate pretended that she was sick. Kingsley, who at this point had developed sexual feelings for her, decided to take her home. She took them to an apartment in Aja, which seemed rather expensive for a stripper to afford. But she had the key to the place and used it to open the door. She switched on the lights and invited them in. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. As soon as Kingsley stepped into the living room, Kate, who was presumed to be sick, jumped at him and started kissing him, running her hands all over him. Already turned on, Kingsley told his bodyguards to wait outside till he was done. After laying Kate on a couch and kissing her some more, he phoned his bodyguards and instructed them to go and wait for him at a nearby hotel. Kate had him exactly where she wanted him, as he spent the night at her place. In the morning, he got a call from his bodyguards while he was still in bed. "There is trouble, sir," they said. He was confused. He turned to the other end of the bed, but Kate was not there. As he attempted to hurry down from the bed and pull on his clothes, the 3 guys who had set him up walked into the room. "We hope you enjoyed our accommodation," they said, dragging him down from the bed. He was still in boxers and singlets. As they rough-handled him, they pushed him out of the apartment and into the midst of a crazy crowd that has gathered in the compound. Kingsley found himself on the ground with blood dripping from the side of his head. He could barely think. He could barely talk. The hopelessness of the situation ignited a sudden fear in him, which prompted him to clamber to his feet and run towards the exit gate. But one of the guys, who was clutching a bottle of whiskey, which he had picked from the apartment, smashed it on his head. As blood flowed, the angry mob descended on him like a pack of hyenas. Kingsley could barely stand as a series of blows landed on his face, neck, ribs, stomach, and every other part of his body. A few people in the mad crowd were trying to stop the beating, which was absolutely uncalled for, but it only intensified as Kingsley somehow managed to stagger out of the compound. Other passers-by joined in, pummeling him. He tried to run back into the apartment, but it was too late. The mob had produced a worn tire and some petrol, which they hung around his neck. As they proceeded to set him ablaze, a shot was suddenly fired into the air. The mob dispersed instantly as everyone ran for their dear lives, leaving behind a bleeding Kingsley half dead on the ground. The shot came from the AK-47 of a police officer that was brought to the scene by Kate. Kingsley was rushed to the hospital where the doctor pronounced him dead, all because the guiding principles for this law was not observed.